we like to refer to as IMAP, and this is our monthly webinar. My name is Ray Lepalkin, and IMAP is an association of the Universal Peace Federation, UPF, which represents a global network of journalists who support a socially responsible and moral media and are committed to work together for the achievements of a world of peace based on the principles of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. UPF, which is an NGO in general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, was founded by Dr. Sun Myung Moon and his wife, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, who have dedicated their lives to fostering global harmony and understanding and tirelessly advocating for peace and reconciliation. Our title today is Women Standing for Religious Freedom. So today we'll be discussing some threats to religious freedom from around the world. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, "Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. However, not all nations protect people of faith and religious minorities equally." Last month, there was a 3-day International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C., and testimonies were shared about religious persecution from around the world. So we'll hear today from 3 of the voices raised at that important event. Our moderator today is Peggy Ujiri, and Peggy lives in Denver with her husband Kenji, and they have 3 grown children. She serves as the executive director of UPF in Colorado and the Rocky Mountain coordinator for IMAP. Peggy has over 40 years of experience in organizing interfaith and intercultural conferences and promoting faith-based values in the United States and internationally. Now, welcome, Peggy.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you and welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join our webinar today. And I especially want to thank these 3 courageous women that are here with us today. And they are all passionate advocates for religious freedom. And they have many accomplishments in their own right, and many cases have taken on great risks to themselves in standing up and speaking out. So I'm sure you all are looking forward to hearing from them. It was my privilege to attend the IRF Summit in Washington, D.C. Last month. And there were literally thousands of people from around the world that came and were trying to share and promote their cause of having been persecuted and in many cases having violence against their communities in many and various countries. So today our first speaker will be Dr. Moriko Hori. She is the international president of the Women's Federation for World Peace, also known as WFWP, and she oversees 800 chapters in Japan, as well as all around nations around the world. And they focus on community activities related to family and youth education. Moriko is also the Director of Global Development and Aid Projects for WFWP International, and she's worked on more than 110 humanitarian projects in 50 countries, and that they contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly in the area of women's empowerment, poverty eradication, education, and medical assistance. Some of the projects have actually been selected by the United Nations as best practices. Dr. Hori graduated from Columbia University with a BA in Cultural Anthropology, and she went on to earn her MA and PhD in International Relations at Waseda University in Tokyo. Her specialty is Japan-Korea history education and reconciliation policies. She also serves as senior researcher on the board of directors at the Institute for Peace Policies. As international president, she travels more than 20 times a year and manages 500 branches in Japan alone. Welcome, Dr. Hori.
Oh, thank you, Peggy, for a kind introduction. Let me share my PowerPoint first. Okay, I hope this works. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we also see the writing to the left. Is that what you?
Oh, okay. So I have to change, sorry. Okay. Greetings from Tokyo, Japan. Thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. My name is Moriko Hori. I am the president of Women's Federation for World Peace Japan and International. Today, I will talk about the persecution against Women's Federation Japan. And let me briefly explain about the background of the religious persecution in Japan. After the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the attempt to make the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, formerly known as the Unification Church, responsible for it. Tetsuya Yamagami, the assassin, offered as motivation for his his crime that he intended to punish Abe for his collaboration with the Family Federation, a religious organization he hated, he claimed, because his mother went bankrupt in 2002 after her excessive donation to the group. Following the crime, an old campaign was revamped by lawyers and others hostile to the Family Federation, mostly for political reasons, as they resented for decades its successful sponsorship of anti-communist initiatives. Press conferences and an unprecedented media campaign of slander followed until the government decided to seek the dissolution of Family Federation as a religious organization. And let me briefly explain about our organization, Women's Federation for World Peace. Peggy introduced a little bit about us. The Women's Federation for World Peace International is a UN NGO. And Women's Federation Japan is one of the chapters of Women's Federation International. And Women's Federation Japan alone has conducted more than 110 overseas projects in 50 countries. Our projects were mostly in the deprived areas of developing countries. We have constructed many schools, from kindergarten, high school, vocational schools, and we have built, many hospitals, and we're doing Japan alone. Excuse me? Yeah. And our volunteers dedicated their lives for supporting women and children in need. Women's Federation has been awarded by many governments and international organizations for our volunteer activities. And this is the project map of Women's Federation Japan. So you can see what kind of project we're doing in each country. Okay, sorry. Let's see. Let me go to the next. Okay. Women's Federation for World Peace Japan. Sorry, I lost my page. Actually, we came to the attention of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Actually, the Embassy of Mozambique, Africa, they recommended one of our volunteers to Mozambique, Mrs. Hozan, who is a school director, for her dedication to the children of Mozambique. They recommended the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Japan to give an award to her. But the member of Japan Communist Party, Kokuta, he accused the Foreign Ministry of Japan for giving the award to Women's Federation, which he calls anti-social organization. So because of this incident, the many Japanese media started to cover our stories. And then the many persecutions from TV news and newspapers, magazines, and we also received many harassing phone calls. We got more than 5,000, negative articles on SNS, and also NNLSS is a national network of lawyers against spiritual cells. They are related to the Communist Party in Japan. This lawyers group, they actually, sorry, I'm in the wrong page. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, now I go. Due to the relentless harassment, actually, this was, sorry. Okay, due to the relentless harassment, the foreign minister decided to publicly rescind the award, even though we had done nothing wrong. Now we lost 2,000 paying members due to the negative reputation created by the media. Our projects are in crisis, which directly threaten the lives of 20,000 beneficiaries. For 30 years, our volunteers dedicated their lives to support 400,000 women and children in many developing countries. Their own reputation and dignity were damaged when Japanese Communist Party and their affiliated lawyers attacked our project just because Women's Federation and Family Federation have the same founder, Reverend Sunmin Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. We have been enduring many persecutions and hindrance for many years. On Women's Federation, women who are part of Women's Federation, I'm sorry. Okay. Actually, the city of Takasaki notified the local chapter that it would not permit the use of public facility, stating that Women's Federation is an organization that causes fear among Takasaki residents. The notification was particularly absurd, given that Women's Federation, as a volunteer organization, has been contribution to the local community in Takasaki for 30 years with projects that local citizens know and appreciate. Many local chapters were registered as volunteer organizations with our respective local governments. Some of these local governments unilaterally canceled our registration. In September, 2 printing companies refused to print our materials after they had agreed to do so. One company stated that you are related to the Unification Church and our company cannot print your order as it would affect our company's reputation. We cannot print our version of story in Japan, and we have problems in telling it orally too, as several hotels have refused to rent rooms to us, again, before they're afraid of being attacked by, opponent lawyers and Japanese media. Female International Student Japanese Speech Contest We are well known in colleges throughout Japan for this event, this project. It is a contest about the proficiency female foreign students have acquired in the Japanese language. On June 15 last year, the opponent lawyers issued a protest statement against the speech contest, requesting that local governments and universities should not permit the use of public facility by Women's Federation Japan. The speech contest is about language and has nothing to do with religion or the Family Federation. Women's Federation members were astonished by this protest. Women's Federation Japan has been organizing this contest for 26 years, with a cooperation of several embassies, universities, and local governments. It has been widely praised as a way of supporting international female students who came to Japan. The speech contest has been one of the Women's Federation flagship project, not only supporting female international students, but also providing valuable opportunities for Japanese citizens to understand Japan through the perspectives of international students. We take pride in conducting this project to empower female students and enhance international understanding. Due to the protests by opponent lawyers and requests to local governments, some local chapters of WFWB Japan can no longer use certain public facilities. 5 local governments refused permission for the use of public facility for the speech contest. Some university officials indicated that their university were accused of cooperating with the Family Federation just for allowing their international students to participate in our speech contest. June 15 last year, National Network of Lawyers Against Spiritual Sales issued a statement of protest against Women's Federation and our project. Female International Students Japanese Speech Contest. The opponent lawyers claim that Women's Federation is the dummy organization of Unification Church to make money to donate to Unification Church. Moreover, this lawyers group claimed Women's Federation as the front organization of Unification Church to missionize people to make Unification Church members. Actually, we did manage to hold 4 press conferences and have submitted numerous protest letters to local governments and released various reports. Unfortunately, our claims have received limited coverage in the media, indicating that most Japanese media outlets blindly follow the opponent lawyers' propaganda and do not prioritize truth. Our damages are becoming increasingly severe and can only become worse as the process of dissolution of the Family Federation advances. Note that this situation doesn't affect only our members in Japan, it also endangers the well-being and, in some cases, even the lives of over 20,000 beneficiaries who have been supported by Women's Federation Project overseas and rely on our help. If we are not allowed to conduct our normal activities and raise funds in Japan, we will be compelled to shut down our project supporting tens of thousands of women and children in poverty-stricken countries. They will be deprived of education, food, and shelter we provide and will also become victims of opponent lawyers, Japanese Communist Party, and the slander campaign in Japan. So right now we are trying to fight not only for human rights and religious freedom, but we try to take back our dignity by, suing our opponent lawyers. And religious freedom leaders all over the world, I truly ask to cope with us. We cannot do this alone. We have to make allies. So I hope we can work together for freedom of religion. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to convey our situation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Hori. And I want to mention to everyone on the call today that it's 4 a.m. in Japan, but Moriko has gotten up so early in order to join our call live today.
Sorry, I feel dizzy and I couldn't, manage my PowerPoint and everything. But thank you so much for your time and everything.
And if you have any questions for any of our speakers during the course of the call, you can type your question into the chat. And that way we'll have those questions available when we get to the question and answer period. So next, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is Elfidar Iltebir. She's the president of the Uyghur American Association. She was born in Urumqi, East Turkestan. So East Turkestan is the region which is also commonly known as Xinjiang in Western China. And she grew up in Istanbul, Turkey, until immigrating to the US in 2000. She has a BA in marketing from George Mason University and has over 20 years of marketing and project management experience, which I'm sure helps her in her nonprofit work now. She's the daughter of a prominent Uyghur writer and journalist and an active member of the Uyghur community and an outspoken human rights activist. Elfidar was elected president of the Uyghur American Association in May of 2022. So please join me in welcoming Elfidar Iltebir.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on Uyghur women and also Uyghurs in general. Most of you may already know what's going on in my hometown in East Turkestan, but I wanted to give the general, like basically China's genocide against Uyghurs 101, the general idea, and then from there, what's going on to the women's religious freedom. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see it? All right.
Yes.
So as I said, my arrow is not working now. That's weird. Let me stop and redo it. Okay. Can you guys see it now?
Yes.
Let me make it full view. Well, you can just go this way. I'll just go manually. So I don't want to take your time. I apologize for the beginning. So I would like to talk who are the Uyghurs, why China is committing genocide to Uyghur people, and then our life before the genocide was declared, and also the life inside the concentration camps, outside the concentration camp, and what have we done so far and what we need help in what areas. So Uyghurs are the Turkic, the Central Asian Muslim people native to East Turkestan, which China calls Xinjiang, which means new territory. And we had long history rich history of having an independent state, our own, army, own country, but we were occupied by China in 1949. Since then, the Chinese government came as we will help you with develop your country, your bridges, build bridges, and we took them in. But by time our lands were confiscated, our jobs were taken, the livelihood of Uyghurs were being killed by day, and started with discrimination, assimilation, and now we are facing genocide today. This is how is Turkestan look like, some part, some beautiful view of the mountains, the rivers, and also the city I was born. Urumqi is in the middle. I'm going faster because I have lots of slides, but we can ask questions at the end. And Uyghurs, why China is committing this genocide? As you see, that is a mosque once, I think that's like 1990s, that photo, people were able to, mostly men, as you see, pray at our mosques. And then that's how Uyghur girls look like, happy and some, smiley face. Again, those are the photos from back in the days. So when Xi Jinping take his role, he wanted to be successful on his one road, one belt, one road initiative. And in order to do that, he wanted to have a strong control over the whole China. And he sees anyone not Han Chinese as a security threat. So they want one homogeneous Han Chinese population so they can control easily and assimilate and eradicate all other nations. And they were successful for many nationalities there, but for Tibetans, for Uyghurs, and for Mongolians, we were resisting because we are totally different historically. Our religion is different, our language is different, culture is different. And you see these photos are now doesn't exist. And other reasons why China is doing this is because our land connects China to Europe. So it's very important for their oil business, for their trade, for their manufacturing business. As you see, the Silk Road pass in our region. That's why they want to have a firm control over our region. Also, our region is very rich with oil, gold, minerals, critical minerals, and also our size of our land is pretty big, and that's another solution for their increased population. So before the camps, what has happened is slowly the assimilation, the discrimination change, and the cameras increase. There were many things were getting restricted. There were forced abortion. For example, my mom was faced to forced abortion 3 times. So what they do is just like a drug test in the US, the government officials comes in the morning and take all the women and test. And even if you're 8 months pregnant, you have to do abortion because you're not allowed. In 1980, China came up with one-child policy in order to control their population. And what happened is with that, there were a misbalance, which I will talk about later. So for minorities, they were allowing for 2 kids, but the government tells you when to have your child. And after the 2 kids, if you have any other child, you are fired. You're not allowed to get many benefits, and it was very rough. So that's why it was very tightly controlled, and forced contraceptives. Women were placed the contraceptive forcibly, and restrictions on Uyghur language in school. So when I was born, I had Uyghur language as a primary language, and then Chinese was a secondary language. That is 1980s, and slowly they changed by bilingual language. So the Chinese and Uyghur was teaching at the same time, which was okay. But now it totally changed, and now the old schools are Chinese language, and you have 2 hours of elective Uyghur language, unfortunately. And the Uyghurs are afraid to even pick Uyghur language as an elective class. They think government will label them as like, oh, they're nationalists. That's why our language, our culture, everything is at stake right now. Restriction on names and the Turkic and Muslim names, because they didn't want us to, especially our future kids, to connect to our origin, connect to our background historically. Restriction on practice of religion was also not allowed. Like back in the days when I was in China, 1980s, we were not allowed to fast. Government employees not allowed to fast. We're not allowed to practice our religion. Only like elderlies were allowed to, and government gives you permission to do your practice. And the mosque pictures I show you earlier is from Eid. It's from the holiday. So separation from Turkic Muslim route, we talked about it. Forced relocation of young Uyghur girls to Eastern China. So forced labor wasn't a new recent term. It was happening much before by transferring Uyghur women to inner China to the factories to work. Now, life inside the camps. As you know, starting 2016, we got disconnected from our family members. We couldn't talk to them, our parents, our loved ones, and we didn't know what was going on. At the beginning, China denied. However, after the Canadian researcher showed the satellite map of those camps, then China came and said, oh, those are vocational training centers. We're educating Uyghurs, so-called separatists, extremists, but they were going men and women, old and young, county by county. First, they took our thinkers, our professors, our artists, our singers, our doctors, basically the backbone of the society, the writers, the teachers. So the tradition bearers, were arrested and detained first, and after that they went county by county, and mass detention happened, and then they were taken to the camps. And once we heard the camp survivors, then we learned what was going on in those camps. They were definitely not school. People were forced to political indoctrination, torture, sterilization, rape, forced labor, organ harvesting, separation of family and children, deprivation of identity, language, culture, religion, and even sleep, testing zone for Chinese medicine and technological tools based on the camp survivors. That's the photo you see on the right side in the corner. That is the inside the cell. That bucket in the corner is their restroom, and their cameras, and no windows, 24 hours monitored. Everything you do is, monitored there. That table is to eat, to sleep, to study. And because there's so many people in the cells, they can't even sleep normal. So they take turns. Half of them had to stay awake for 2 hours to rest, sleep, so on the sideways. And it's very, all the things they're going through is unbelievable in today's world. And organ harvesting, I want to talk about a little bit, because it's also part of the religious, beliefs, because we believe in to be buried in our religion. However, every detainees that were taken to the camps, their DNAs were taken, their full body scans were taken, biometrical tests were made. We were wondering why China care about so much, about us. The reasons is to create a massive data for their organ, harvesting business. So as you see that line, it says fast lane for organ transportation is on the airport. Like, how much business are you doing to have a fast lane at the airport for organ transportations? That shows the massive business going on there, that they have the big database. In China's website, the national website has around 6 million people are registered as the donors, but China can match your, if you need a kidney, if you need a heart, excuse me, they can match it in weeks. However, UK, for example, they have 24 million people as a donor. They cannot match your DNA and all organs for a year. That shows they have a black market in China, and they're using Uyghurs and other detainees, political prisoners, as a market for their organ harvesting. Another thing, 2 years ago in a New York Times had an article about 13 tons of hair seized at this New York port by CBP. And those hairs were from the detainees of the camp. 13 tons of hair is, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people's hair, because they were shaved before they get into the camps. So China is not just keeping us by millions in the camps, they're also profiting of us. They're selling us piece by piece. And so many things are going on, and it's very heartbroken. This is one of the camp in 2015 on the left. It was flat surface. And then in 2018, the Apenjin camp was established, and this is one of the 500 plus camps in East Turkestan. And that one camp can hold 70,000 people. That shows the number is very high. By State Department, it was 2 million, around 2 million, and Pentagon announced it was about 3 million. However, we Uyghurs believe the numbers are much higher than that. Life outside the camp is not too different either. As I showed earlier, the state streets are cameras everywhere. With the social credit program, the face recognition works like crazy there. They can get you anywhere you go, whatever you're doing. So surveillance state is, that's how it is. It's basically open prison, right? And then the forced sterilization, forced abortion. This is all happening outside the camp to the normal people that are not taken to the camps. Forced marriage, surveillance through official homestay, separation of family and children, forced labor transfers to inner China, and eliminates of identity, language, culture, and religion. I want to talk about two photos on the side again. The top one is Uyghur girl forced to marry Han Chinese officials. This is one of the biggest thing, again, that is, you know, against our religion, right? What happens is, when there is a birth control policies by China since 1980, there were like 8 to 9 men to 1 woman. So the population had a big imbalance in proportion, and they need brides. And now they're finding government is basically sponsoring for mass rape. They're forcing Uyghur girls to marry Han Chinese. And those girls are sacrificed. They're marrying in order to save their parents. Otherwise, their parents will be taken to the camp. And then many Uyghurs had their suicides. There are many stories, but unfortunately, as you know, we can't get a lot of data from China, only some leaked documents. So this is unbelievable. The forced marriage is going on big. Basically, what we are worrying about is also the children will be mixed, and what will they be, like Chinese children, Uyghur children? The future is very dark. And then the home state program, the left corner one. Han Chinese government cadre comes to your house. Imagine a stranger comes to your home, stays months, and reports what you're doing. Are you praying? Are you reading Quran, reading Holy Book? Are you talking about government? And they report this to the government. If you do something slightly something against the government, or practice your daily religion, you are taken to the camp. And this is happening in China too. And then you have to follow the policies, which says eat together, sleep together, travel together, learn together, and cook together, I believe. So basically, you need to follow the rules, otherwise you'll be taken. And rule is having a Han Chinese in your house as a guest for months. That is also very unacceptable here. The sterilization, we talked about it earlier. Adrian Zenz from Associated Press had a report and had evidence of this Uyghur population. The birth rates fell 60% from 2015 to 2018. That shows that Chinese government are killing our future when it's in the wombs. And that's also one part of the genocide convention, that they're playing with the rates of the futures. And for the kids, so when I heard about the detained all the Uyghurs were being detained, I was wondering as a mother what's happening to the kids, right? But they're not given to the grandparents. They are taken to state-run orphanages, kindergartens, and boarding schools. According to 2019 data, 900,000 children were taken to the state-run orphanages and kindergartens, like age from 4 to 6. And while parents are in China in the factories or in the camps or in the prisons, stripped away from their culture and language, kids are also stripped away from their culture, their language, their identity, their religion, their world. They're becoming inhumane, robotic CCP subjects in those camps, away from their family. And this is how we used to learn Uyghur language in our schools. And you see on the right side, there are Confucius schools are teaching a Chinese way of life and culture to the Uyghurs. And let me talk about forced labor briefly, because it's not just economic exploitation. Forced labor is one part of China's genocidal tool, because while they're transferring them marriage age women mostly, and men and women, the parents, to the camps or the inner China for the forced labor factories, they're separating families, so parents cannot teach the culture, teach the language, teach the religion to their kids, and that's how they are tearing apart our families. And also, unwillingly, we are in the US helping for this genocide buying some companies, being, joint venture with Chinese companies. We are helping with US capital, like our pension funds are invested some funds that helps Chinese government, and some of the companies also unwillingly, unintentionally helping this genocide. And what we want is them to exit the region, because unlike in other countries, that in China, any companies in East Turkestan, they have to work with Chinese government. Here is our culture, used to be our architecture, beautiful homes with Uyghur style, but they are being demolished. And Uyghurs are still trying to resist, as you see in the photos in the bottom, that those were taken by the French journalists. I'm going to skip faster since I almost passed my time. Religious, now this is our topic. In China, any religion, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, every religion is considered a disease. They're afraid of religion. They think it's a threat to government's stability. Why? Because our religion, no matter which religion you are, our religion teach us to speak the truth, teach us to be just, ask for justice. Our religion teach us to be united with each other, right? And those are the threat for Chinese government. If we speak the truth about the camps, truth about our loved ones, their government stability is going to shake. And that's why they don't like any religion. They don't want the Falun Gongs. They don't want any united groups. They want only Chinese government's CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, to be in power in every way, and that's the only big power in there. So Uyghurs' Islamic faith have been targeted by China's genocidal campaign, the destruction of mosques. As you see, many of our historical big mosques were changed, destroyed. Some were changed to restaurants and even restrooms. Nearly 60% of our mosques are destroyed. There are some exist. That's for the international media to show, hey, we allow them to practice, and also some of them are in Kashgar, for example, for tourism reason. Most recent report in UHRP, Abdulwali Ayub and Rachel had this report on women's role in religion. This is the most recent one, and I wanted to talk about the key points that these reports showed that mostly we were thinking that men were in the camps, but many hundreds and thousands of women were also taken to the camps because of their religious beliefs. Uyghur women denied freedom of religion and beliefs, women religious learning and religious gatherings and daily prayers, and even wearing hijab have been explicitly criminalized. So they were taken to the camp because of that. And then under the anti-extremism campaign of the CCP, women who acted as religious teachers and leaders in the community have been portrayed as dupes of religion extremism. And many elderly women, some are age of 80, have been detained and imprisoned for religious learning that took place 20, 30 years previously, often when the accused was young as 5 or 6 years old. So a woman who's 80 years old, if they prayed 30 years ago, they were taken to the camps. Many sentences were made basically they were called criminals such for their studying Quran or wearing a hijab or committing something that commit before even the practicing Islam was illegal. 91 women from one single county were detained because they were officially registered by the state as a buwi, which means the religious teacher. The detention and imprisonment of female religious leaders and the criminalization of children's religion socializations, in which women play a significant role, hastens the destruction of Uyghur communities. Basically, Uyghur women were also taken to the camps and faced all those torture just because they learned their religion. And those are the signs what had happened in China. When there is something wrong, or let's say we are as an Uyghur a little disappointed with Islamic world, those Islamic countries, not all of them, but I think the people are with us, but the leaders are silenced by economic incentives, given by Chinese government. When there was in Denmark, a journal produced Prophet Muhammad's photo, there were, big protests around the world. But as you see, the Chinese government is burning hundreds of Qurans, praying mass in China, but the Muslim world is silent. They're not taking enough actions. And I don't know if they don't realize what's going on. The religion itself is, at stake. And they even, Chinese government changing the Islamic religion based on their Communist Party's rules and policies. So here if there is a Muslim among you, when we use tasbih, we're supposed to say, thank God, alhamdulillah, and subhanallah, and Allahu Akbar. There is only one God, and thank God for giving me this life. They changed this, and they had these signs on our mosques, and it says, thank for the CCP and thank for the Xi Jinping. That's what you're supposed to say when you pray. That's how they're changing the verses of Quran. And then the Muslim world was not making big, demonstrations, and hopefully that will change. But I wanted to say, even in the UN, China is enjoying impunity, even though they're attacking the religion there. They're acting like they're a religious lover in other countries. They're destroying the mosque in our countries and building a mosque in another Muslim country to silence them, as if they care about religious. And that's very sad, unfortunately, and very ironic. Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, and everything you're saying is so interesting, but I want to make sure Frances has time to give her presentation.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
So I had only the actions taken. So I want to thank U.S. government. After the U.S. Declared it as a genocide, 11 other countries followed it. So all we need to do is raise awareness, share this with your, friends and loved ones, and let's call our Congress members to help Uyghurs so they can have their religion freely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's really very shocking information. But anyway, I would like to introduce our final speaker, Frances Hui. Frances is the first public activist from Hong Kong to receive political asylum in the US. At the early age of just 14 years old, she started to involve herself in the Hong Kong social movements. She's a former standing committee member of Scholarism, which was a campaign for freedom of the press and democracy. And she's a campaigner for multiple pro-democracy candidates in Hong Kong. As a journalist, her column, I Am from Hong Kong, Not China, published in April 2019, attracted attention worldwide. And obviously, it also attracted attention of the Chinese authorities, who have now put her on a hit list and put a bounty on her, even though she is now living here in the US. So Frances, now based in the US, continues her advocacy at the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation in DC. She's the policy and advocacy coordinator, and she advocates for Hong Kong internationally. She also heads up the organization We the Hong Kongers, dedicated to promoting and strengthening the culture and identity of Hong Kongers abroad. Please join me in welcoming Frances Hui.
Thank you, Peggy. Let me start by thanking the Universal Peace Federation and IMAC for inviting me to speak here. I think your work is extremely important, especially now we depend a lot on the media to get the right message out and to shine lights onto different pressing issues around the world. Today's panel is about women defending religious freedom. Last month at the International Religious Summit, Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C., I also spoke with a full panel of women who share how their social identities play a role in their movement for religious freedom and the challenges that come along. And I always find it really empowering to see the courage, fearlessness, and resilience that women embody in their lives, and how that kind of explain why you see many women in different freedom movements as well. So I'm really grateful that I'm put this panel together of, truly incredible women who also play a significant role in different movements. And I'm also very honored to be invited to be part of this. Just to, Peggy just introduced myself, but I wanted to also, add a little background about, my background, and she talked about the bounty as well. So 2 months ago, in December, the Hong Kong authorities placed a $1 million Hong Kong bounty on my head for my advocacy abroad. In my work in the US, I have briefed US officials on the plight of Hong Kong and organized global solidarity campaigns with Tibetans, Uyghurs, Taiwanese, and Chinese dissidents to stand up against the CCP's totalitarianism. I was actually born and raised in Hong Kong, and in particular, my Catholic background also allowed me to witness the changes happening in the religious community in Hong Kong, and that's why I pay a lot of attention to what's going on and with religious freedom in the city and how the CCP is starting to tighten control over that part of freedom as well. So today I wanted to shine a light on the plight of religious communities in Hong Kong who are experiencing the CCP's persecution in an environment that is getting increasingly hostile and repressive. I think Alfadar touched upon a lot of very important points about how the CCP is basically cracking down on different religions. So in the past decade, the CCP as an atheist regime has been promoting the campaign of sinicization of religion in China. And now we're seeing that being implemented in Hong Kong as well. The idea of sinicization of religion was first introduced by Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, in 2015. It requires religious groups to align with socialist and communist doctrines, customs, and morality. And they really like to confuse sinicization with enculturation or indigenization, which is sort of this Christian idea to incorporate local culture into a religion. But in reality, China's sinicization is about anchoring CCP's ideology within faith. And China, as I said, as an atheist regime, they don't really care or respect religious freedom. The only reason that they are keeping religion around is because they wanted to use the influence of religious communities to propagate their political agenda. And to do that, they have to tighten control over religions, and they have to transform them into more acceptable versions of doctrines. So as Avadar just mentioned, books of scriptures, these holy books, Quran are all altered and changed into other terms and into more patriotic and socialist ideas. And so we have seen in China, religious symbols are being destroyed. People in some regions are banned from practicing their religion or attending houses of worship. Religious organizations are basically all controlled by the states, while some of those who refuse to comply are imprisoned. In the case of Hong Kong, we see this campaign of sinicization. It's not that extreme yet, as it is happening in China, but we do see many warning signs that are leading to it, and how religious freedom in Hong Kong is broken as part of an orchestrated takeover of the religious sphere. So in 2021, a leading Chinese think tank published a blue book on religions that details the involvement of individual faithful and religious organizations in the 2019 Hong Kong pro-democracy movement. The report directly points a gun toward foreign religions, such as the Catholic Church and Protestants, saying that they tend to lean towards Western cultures and democratic systems. They even single out the Catholics in Hong Kong as more involved in politics than any other Christians. The report also said that given China's strategic and geopolitical factors, the religious groups in Hong Kong play an important role for China's engagement with the world. It also spent a very long portion, 14 pages, to focus on education, talking about how the positive impact of national security education, and advising schools to amplify that importance of patriotic identity to students. So last month, with my organization, the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation, I published this an extensive report titled Hostile Takeover, the CCP and Hong Kong's Religious Communities. In this report, we highlighted testimonies of eyewitnesses both in and outside of Hong Kong across different religions, who detailed the way how CCP is taking over the religious sphere in Hong Kong. We found there are 4 key warning signs, including Beijing's sinicization of religion, the use of religious education for indoctrination, the intimidation of clergy leading to self-censorship, and direct attack on religion and the faithful. And we found that first, China is tapping into the influence of religious communities in Hong Kong to promote its agenda. And religious leaders are being pressured to promote CCP's priorities. For example, the Muslim community in Hong Kong is politicized to rally support for CCP's development initiatives and to downplay China's human rights violations against Uyghurs. Alvadar just give you guys a brief introduction about the areas, East Turkestan, as known as Xinjiang, which is an autonomous region in China with millions of Uyghurs that are kept in internment camps for re-education and essentially a genocide. So some of these Islamic leaders in Hong Kong, they participated in different high-profile trips to Xinjiang. And in these trips, they were interviewed by Chinese TV channels, praising how grateful they are to China for taking care of their Muslim brothers and sisters, saying that there is no genocide against Uyghurs and everything is great in China. And in reality, we know that's not true. We've seen reports and presentation by Alvadar that this is happening, like genocide is happening in the area, and they are covering up and never acknowledge that this is what they're doing. But we know this is happening to Uyghurs in Xinjiang. At churches, priests have received complaints about discussing the government in their sermons. A Protestant pastor was actually sentenced to 13 months in jail under the national security law. And therefore, many religious leaders are walking along a very vague red line and censoring their sermons, meaning that they can't fully preach the word of scripture without fear. Also, persons of faith are also increasingly subject to legal prosecution, some of whom are names that we know of, like Jimmy Lai, Cardinal Joseph Sen, and Joshua Wong, just to name a few. And at school, the curricula of religious studies are now mixed with patriotic and socialist values. Students' textbooks on religious studies contain prayers praising and embracing their Chinese identity, saying that they're really grateful that, thank God for creating me as Chinese. That sort of very patriotic content in their religious studies textbook. The PRC national flag that symbolizes atheism and an oppressive regime is also raised and displayed in every school beside sacred symbols, like the cross, a depiction of Jesus Christ, or an Islamic flag. And so right next to it or right in front of it, you see the PRC national flag that are waving and being raised. So a month ago, the Hong Kong government proposed another new national security law known as Article 23 legislation that will further double down on civil liberties by targeting espionage, state secrets, and foreign influence. Now, how would that affect religious freedom in Hong Kong? Under this new law, international non-governmental organizations with bases in Hong Kong, including any of those that are not related to politics, as well as religious bodies like the Catholic Church and Christian missionaries in Hong Kong, they will all be affected and subject to legal prosecution under this law. They will also likely have to localize their operation and compromise their communication with their foreign bases. So in the case of the Catholic Church in Hong Kong, it's a question whether the church will have, after the law is passed, is a question that whether the church has to sever its ties with the Vatican and follow the path of the church in China. And additionally, the CCP is also pressing for establishing an oversight body in Hong Kong to control religions. And we also know the Vatican is considering legalizing the state-controlled Catholic Church and the Bishops' Conference in China. So all of these, both legislative initiatives and along with Vatican's proposal, it's very likely that Hong Kong clerics would then have to join the Patriotic Association in the future and take oaths of fidelity to the government. So in conclusion, religious freedom in Hong Kong is deteriorating, and the deterioration comes not only in the form of self-censorship and persecution of faithful involved in politics, but also the manipulation of scriptures and minds to help justify CCP's religious persecution and to advance its political agenda. And Beijing's sinicization of religion and their control of speech have played out throughout education, religious practices, social issues, and politics. And what the CCP is going after is not just those who stand up against it, but people of free minds and the future generation, as we see what they're doing in their education. So at the end of the report, we called the international community to acknowledge that, the systemic violations of the CCP and to stand against that stand against the systemic violation of religious freedom by the Hong Kong authorities and the CCP. We also listed several steps that the US government, other democracies, and global religious leaders can take to safeguard religious freedom in Hong Kong. So I would just emphasize two of the asks. First, to hold responsible individuals accountable for violating religious freedom in Hong Kong through sanctions. And second, to prioritize advocacy for religious freedom and the release of prisoners of conscience in diplomatic engagement with Hong Kong and Chinese counterparts. Earlier I mentioned Jimmy Lai, and I wanted to quickly bring up his case because Jimmy Lai is a Catholic believer who is currently on trial in Hong Kong, facing the possibility of life sentencing as we speak. He is charged under the national security law with colluding with foreign forces. He is also facing a conspiracy charge under the colonial era sedition law. And last month, the prosecutor actually presented a financial investigation showing that Jimmy Lai has a long history of financing local and overseas entities with political backgrounds. And one of the people that was named is Cardinal Sen, being the biggest recipient on the list, although that donation was made like way years before the national security law was implemented. So I think Jimmy's story and the story of the witnesses who are featured in our report are all stories of bravery and strength in defending freedom that many of us have taken for granted. If you wanted to know more about Jimmy Lai, there is a documentary on YouTube called The Hong Konger, and it's an hour and a half long documentary about his story, how he came from China to Hong Kong and built up his career as an entrepreneur and take up the role to participate in freedom movements and democracy for Hong Kong, and that he has decided to stay in Hong Kong, although he has all the chances to leave. And now he is imprisoned and again charged under these laws, and facing the chances of life sentencing. So again, it's a story of bravery, and I think all of us, I have a lot to learn from that, and I think all of these stories are also telling us that there are actually still people in Hong Kong who are combating face to face with an authoritarian regime, and more of them are now paying for the price. And the question here is, how can we as international communities safeguard that freedom? And I think this is a question that we try to address in the report. So I strongly recommend folks here to check out our report, which is available on our website, thecfhk.org. I will paste the link to the chat box later after my speech. But I hope that the report and my short presentation can give you a better idea of the current situation in Hong Kong, and hopefully it will inspire you to look for ways to promote religious freedom in Hong Kong as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis. And I was going to ask all of you to please put any link in the chat for where people could go to find out more about this issue, and what you would suggest people to do to, how could they respond? How could they support the work that you're doing? And I have watched that video on YouTube, and that very interesting and very inspiring video of really heroic courage. And so, well, we don't have too much time for question and answer, but I would like to give each of you a chance to have the closing remark. And in your closing remark, if you could just also address that point of what people on this call can do to help. And I would also encourage people after this, we'll send out a link to everybody of the recording of this call on YouTube, and I would encourage you to share it with others so that this story could be spread more widely, or these stories. So let's start with Moriko. Would you like to make some closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Peggy, and thank you, those wonderful speakers. It was shocking for me to hear, the situation in Uyghur and Hong Kong. And actually, this is a great opportunity for me to speak out the situation of Japan, because in Japan, no media covers about our stories, even though we send all these like press releases. But so for me to convey the situation of Japan is, this kind of opportunity is the only way. So I think I'm really grateful for this opportunity, so that many people, compared to situation of Uyghur and Hong Kong, our situation is not that serious, but actually this is getting worse and worse. So so I hope, I think there are like 80 more than it was like 70 people listening. But I hope you are interested in, please interested in situation, what is happening in Japan, and the religious freedom is threatening all over the world. And this is not, happening only in Uyghur, Hong Kong, Japan. It's all over the world. So this is really, critical situation. So I truly believe that we work together to change this insanity. So again, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Elfidar?
First, I want to thank everyone. This is how we can help, by listening, sharing the truth. As I mentioned earlier, Chinese government is enjoying impunity at the UN and everywhere. We need to hold China accountable for what they're doing, because no human beings, no matter what your religion is, your background, your nationality, your race, they don't deserve to be treated this way. This is inhumane, and we need to work together. And I think the immediate things we can do, if you are in the US, call our senators for passing the previous Uyghur-related bills. Same with Hong Kong-related or Tibet-related bills. We all are oppressed by Chinese government. And the help is, if you can call your Congress members and say, I heard about this oppression, genocide, and I want my senator to stand up and support the Uyghurs. That will be a big help for us if we can pass some laws at the US Congress that will help to protect Uyghur human rights activists, because Chinese government also silencing us by holding our family member hostage back home. So many of us, their parents, their siblings, their family members, loved ones are in the camps, but they can't speak out because they're afraid now they might kill them, or now they might take more relatives to the camps. So even though China telling the world there's no genocide, camps are closed, but they're transferring Uyghurs to the prisons and work factories. So situation hasn't changed. So we need to work together. I shared my email address on the chat. Feel free to contact me. Feel free to email me, call me. We can, work together to save more lives, more people. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And Francis?
I wanted to again thank all of you for listening, and it's amazing to hear from other speakers about the situation in their own region and their hometown. I think Elfridar also just said what I wanted to say. Call your senator and representatives. On your about your concerns and your support on different Uyghur and Hong Kong related bills. There are multiple ones, some of them related to transnational repression committed by the CCP. We are also hoping that we can develop humanitarian pathways for Hong Kongers who are persecuted in Hong Kong. Things like that. These support, although it's on an individual level and it might sound it's very minimal, but it does change the decision that are made in Washington when they their office receive tons of calls. Same thing goes to social medias. The more people talk about this, the more people use hashtag Hong Kong or Jimmy Lai or Uyghurs, the more these issues could be exposed to a more broader public and audience. I would also just emphasize that I think religious freedom in Hong Kong is something that have been overlooked for years. I think because we thought that people are still practicing religion in Hong Kong, and so it's probably untouched. But again, as I detail in our report, this is the campaign to take over Hong Kong's religious sphere is happening, and it's actually going in a much faster rate. And I think it really deserves a lot more attention than what we're doing with like press freedom and other sort of civil liberties. And yeah, I think also we need to start thinking dialogue is not helping us. I think the international community, like a lot of countries, have hoped that we can have conversation with China. We can, interact with them with a more civilized way, or we can have dialogues with them. But we have learned years and years that the CCP is not going to comply with international laws. They're not going to live up to their promises. We see that in Hong Kong, we see that in the UN. And so it's time for us to think how we can hold China accountable and stop what they're doing, instead of continuing having, very civilized dialogues with them and trying to reason with them. So yeah, again, thank you very much for having me. And it's truly an honor to share with you about the movement in Hong Kong.
Thank you, and thank you all of you, and thank you also for our guests today for staying with us and for opening your mind to these different stories. I would like to say that if there's any particular bills in front of Congress that we could help, support, please send me an email with that information, and we can send it out to all our participants today, because it's sometimes more helpful in contacting a congressperson if you can highlight a certain bill, because they'll pay more attention to it that way. Anyway, thank you all, and I appreciate your participation. We will send out this link, and I hope that you can share this widely and that we can really get these important stories out in this world, because a lot of times media is ignoring them for whatever reason. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Peggy. Thanks.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Amazing reports.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
sad to hear.
So inspiring.
God bless you. God bless you. Thank you.
God bless.
I'm
Thank
overwhelmed.
you.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. Thank you, everybody.
God bless you,
Bye,
courageous women.
Tomiko-san.
We are with you, huh?
You guys are awesome. This is
Thank
one of the
you.
reasons why
Thank
True
you.
Mother's pillow is always wet.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Dynamic. Thank you very, very much. This will go places. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Thank you, EJ.
Unbelievable.